Հարգելի հայրենակիցներ, հայկական
Distinguished
միասնական
compatriots, the
մեկնարկում է իր
staff of GORIS of Unified Information Center launches its work. Right now we are going to be regularly streaming live to present the current situation. The first to report today is the Minister of Health of the Republic of Armenia, Arsen Torosyan, to present the current situation. Mr. Torosyan, please. Good morning, distinguished colleagues. As you know, in result of aggression from Azerbaijan, we have an intense situation in the territory.
We have the tense military situation in Artsakh.
Որի պատճառով մենք ունենք բազմաթիվ վիրավորներ, ինչպես նաև զոհեր, թե ռազմական անձնակազմի շրջանում եւ թե հատկապես ինչը դատապարտելի է քաղաքացիական բնակչության շրջանում։
As a result of which we have sustained casualties and losses both within the military personnel as well as in particular which is to be adamantly condemned among the civilian population.
Ես ինքս ուշ երեկոյան եմ վերադարձել Ստեփանակերտից եւ դա իմ երրորդ այցն էր առաջի օրվանից եւ ուզում եմ նաեւ համեմատել առաջի օրերի եւ վերջի օրերի իրավիճակը։ Իրավիճակը այնպիսին է, որ Ստեփանակերտը գտնվում էր ամբողջությամբ ռմբակոծության տակ։
I returned late last night from Stepanakert myself. That was my third visit, and I'm in a position to make comparisons between the first and this most recent situation. And I can report to you that Stepanakert was fully and completely under heavy rocket and artillery shelling.
Եվ որևէ տարբերություն չկար այդ հրթիռների, թիրախների առումով, դրանք թե քաղաքում գտնվող միգուցե ռազմական օբյեկտներն են եւ թե քաղաքացիական, հատկապես ենթակառուցվածքային, ինչը փաստացի խափանում է քաղաքացիական բնակչության բնականոն կյանքը։
And I can report to you that the targeting was absolutely indiscriminate, making no distinction between perhaps military and civilian targets. That includes civilian infrastructure, which makes it very difficult to organize any work with the population, including perhaps evacuation or any other services.
Եվ հատկապես ես կարող եմ խոսել բժշկական ծառայության առումով, երբ ամբողջությամբ մոբիլիզացված Արցախի բժշկական համայնքը, ինչպես նաև Հայաստանից նրանց օգնության մեկնած մեր գործընկերները, փաստացի երբեմն զրկված են լինում կարիքի մեջ գտնվող մարդկանց օգնություն ցույց տալիս, որովհետև Ստեփանակերտը կամ այլ քաղաքները գտնվում են օդային տագնապի եւ ռմբակոծության տակ եւ նույնիսկ շտապօգնության մեքենաները չեն կարողանում օգնության հասնել այն քաղաքացիներին, որոնք դրա կարիքը ունեն։
I'm responsible for the medical situation, and I can tell you that the entire medical professional staff has been mobilized to assist and extend help to those in need of it most. And the intervention, the shelling by the Azeris preclude more often than not the work of the medical staff and the traffic of the ambulances that are responding to the emergencies most of the time because of the air alerts.
Moreover, I have been myself a witness of an explosion of a shell so close to the hospital of Stepanakert that shake the building, and it could have, with the highest probability, hit the hospital.
And witness firsthand to a shell falling in extreme proximity with the Republican Hospital of Stepanakert, actually missing it by a hair's width.
And the staff, the medical staff, has the impression that when we see the intentions of the military leadership of Azerbaijan states that it's not excluded. They can start hitting the hospitals, which is a war crime against civilians.
There is a prevailing perception among our medical medical staff that the military political leadership of Azerbaijan will not refrain from directly hitting medical infrastructure, which is would directly may be qualified as a crime of war.
So the whole Stepanakert now is full of such fragments, forbidden weapons used, and sometimes when we moved by a car in the city, we witnessed the situation. Ruins of multi-apartment buildings and damaged infrastructure. And we also think that's unpermissible.
All of the territory of Stepanakert is scattered with fragments of ordinances like the ones I demonstrated to you, and that includes also ammunition which is banned by international treaties, that is prohibited to be used even in war. There are many civilian buildings, residential buildings that have been hit hard, and there is rubble all over. There are civilian infrastructures raised to the ground, which makes it almost impossible to bring help to where it's needed most.
And finally, in conclusion, I will say that despite all this, we are standing strong by our compatriots, the whole medical community of Armenia and Artsakh, united, leaving all the not very important things aside, doing evacuation and treatment of the wounded. And Goris, as you know, is the main transit point in that activity, so we're going to be fighting to the end and win.
I would like to inform you that notwithstanding this irresponsible offensive, the entire medical community of Armenia and Artsakh are consolidated around us, setting aside perhaps every other business of tending to the wounded, helping with the evacuation. You may already know that Goris has become a transit hub for the casualties, and we are investing every capacity in facilitating this. And to end my intervention, I would like to reaffirm that we shall definitely persevere and win this war. Thank you for your attention.
Very well. Distinguished colleague, you may be asking your questions to the minister.
Questions are welcome.
Please.
Mr. Zavchernov from Associated Press. How many civilians injured? Are there any numbers injured?
Associated Press. Քանի քաղաքացիական է վիրավորվել, ընդհանուր մանրամասներ կան։
Yesterday you may aware ինչ լեզվով պատասխանեմ։
Yesterday, the Ombudsman of Artsakh published information about casualties among Artsakh population, and provided I've discussed these issues verbally with him, I don't have any written information. So there were 19 killed among civilians and 80 wounded. So I may just repeat
տարբերություն, այսինքն քաղաքացիական ենթակառուցվածքների եւ շենքերի վրա հարձակման արդյունք է։
It's a consequence of attack by Azerbaijan on civilian buildings and population. Of course, we are evacuating the civilian population and providing all the necessary medical treatment, and I once again consider this behavior impermissible.
Casualties included 19 civilians lost their lives and 18 more were wounded. And I have to reiterate that this is a result of the indiscriminate offensive by Azeris attacking civilian residential buildings and civilian infrastructure. Of course, we are doing everything we can to attend
Կենտրոն հեռուստաընկերությունը արտադրական պարոն Թորոսյան երկու
Centered Kentron Television, 2 questions. You mentioned banned ammunition, different caliber missiles. What are the damages caused to the civilian population because of use of such ammunition? Do we have the respective equipment, beds in the hospitals?
Since you mentioned that they are using prohibited ammunition and ordnance, can you specify what the kind of injuries caused by this kind of ammunition? And a follow-up question, whether we have enough equipment and enough of stuff in the blood bank to be able to cover all the needs?
Ընդհանուր առումով ասեմ,
So generally,
ժամանակ ստացված, այսինքն այս պատերազմի կամ այս սրացման ժամանակ ստացված վիրավորումների բնույթը,
the nature of
զենքերի տեսակների
wounds,
կարող մանրամասն անդրադառնալ, որտեղ
I can say during this war, I cannot tell you about the details of the ammunition used. Apparently my colleagues from the Ministry of Defense will bring these details forward. But the lion's share of the wounded, close to 100%, I may say, are fragments of explosions, because the war essentially is the one that is deploying drones and missiles and rockets, and most of the injuries are caused because of the fragments of explosions of the shells or the waves of the explosions that bring death or injury.
My point is that the MOD medical service are a better place to specify the kind of duration between the kind of armament used and the injuries sustained. But I can tell you that almost 100% of the wounds are caused by the explosions rather than being firearm wounds, and that reflects the nature of the offensive, which uses UAVs, heavy artillery and rocket shelling, as well as air attacks. So basically most of the injuries are fragments that are stuck in the tissues, and either unfortunately deaths caused by the direct impact of the explosions or the fragments that have caused major damage.
And now coming back to the second part of your question, yes, either civilian or military medical facilities of Artsakh are fully equipped. They have all the necessary medication, equipment, accessories, the blood bank, and as I mentioned in my opening points, our attention has to be focused on that. As you can see, I've also left all the other errands assigned. So that's the main task, task number one for the medical community of Armenia and Artsakh. Supplies are ensured without any interruption, also including the staff, the medical staff, even asking us voluntarily to go and help their colleagues in Artsakh. Sometimes we even refuse, so that everything is well organized and structured. We do that every day. We also ensure operational administration, because we understand that in certain hotspots we need to concentrate some of our capacity more than in some other places, so we ensure the transportation quickly inside the territory of Artsakh from one medical facility to another. That's not only staff, by the way, but also everything necessary, and also from Armenia to Artsakh.
Yes, all of the civilian and military medical facilities are fully stocked with all the pharmaceuticals, the equipment, utensils that are required to cover the needs of the situation, and that includes also the blood banks that are well stocked. Like I said, number one concern of both me personally and the MOH, whether in Armenia and Artsakh, is setting aside every other concern to focus on the issues at hand. I can assure you that we have uninterrupted the supplies of material and personnel to the medical institutions wherever needed. We even have lineup of volunteer medical personnel that would like to be moved closer to the front line to be of help where it's most needed, to the extent that we even have to turn down some of those applications. We want to make the process as orderly and organized as possible. We also do operational management. That means transfers of personnel and staff as required to those segments where the need becomes more apparent. All of these issues are handled in a professional and fast way.
And the second question, not related to your sector specifically, Mr. Torosyan, as representative of the ruling party in the government of the Republic of Armenia, provided we have the opportunity of asking a question. How do you see the solution to the conflict? Well, thank you. It's been mentioned several times that the resolution of Nagorno-Karabakh issue has to be found only through peaceful processes and negotiations, and Armenian government has been numerously stating that specific point. It's also been mentioned that the military solution, or an attempt to solve it in a military way, contains big potential of distorting the peace in the region and stability as well. So that's why I think that the regional hubs, centers, strategic allies, Russian Federation, as a strategic ally and partner of Armenia, as well as the member of the OSCE Minsk group, as well as the other co-chairs, France and the United States, are not less interested in having stability in this region, and they are doing everything at this moment to ensure that. Hence, I think that's the only solution in terms of somehow calming the conflict and investing all the necessary efforts into the process. And also, I'm sure they know what power Armenian armed forces have, and in consideration of that, we might get a favorable solution.
Your take on the prospect of settlement? And the answer is that the only prospect for the settlement that we see is through peaceful negotiations. That has been reiterated many times by this government. We consider that no military attempt to resolve it has any chances of success. On the opposite, the military attempts to resolve the issue may result in grossly undermining regional and even global security. We are closely cooperating with geopolitical power centers that includes our strategic ally, Russian Federation, as well as the co-chairs of the Minsk group, France, the US, and Russia. And we will not settle for anything less than a peaceful resolution. I know and I hope that seeing the resolve and the determination of our nation and our army, the adversary will realize this eventually.
Simon Ostrovsky, PBS NewsHour. I have two questions. I realize
Yes,
because you're the health minister, but do you know what casualties are among soldiers of both Armenia and Karabakh this war? And also, I know the Russian Prime Minister visited Armenia yesterday, and
Հաստատել, որ Ռուսաստանի վարչապետն է այցելել Հայաստան երեկ, եւ եթե այո, ապա ինչ քննարկումներ են տեղի ունեցել։
Ես իհարկե տիրապետում եմ ամբողջ իրավիճակին, թե թվային եւ թե բովանդակային, սակայն կարծում եմ, որ զինվորների վիրավորների մասին
information about casualties among the military personnel is duly presented by the Ministry of Defense, so the issue for us is not following the numbers, but providing all the necessary medical support.
Access to the figures you referred to, as well as the substance of the issue, but I think it's more appropriate, and the MOD ex officio publishes whatever it is necessary. So I will refrain from specifying figures at this point.
Եվ մասը, որ մենք պարզապես խնդիրը ամեն ինչ լուծում ենք, կազմակերպում ենք այդ մասը։
And the MOH is doing, as I mentioned, everything within its powers and even more to address, and we consider it our mission to treat the casualties and the wounded.
Yes, in fact, the Prime Minister of Russia has not visited the Republic of Armenia yet. There is a meeting planned from the 8th to the 9th in the framework of the Intergovernmental Commission of the Eurasian Economic Union. If I'm not mistaken, the visit will take place the evening of the 8th, events to start since morning the 9th of October. We also have questions and issues on the agenda, and apparently it will be better to raise issues after the meeting.
I assume you're talking about the Eurasian Economic Unit Summit that is to take place between the 8th and the 9th of October this year in Yerevan. The substantive meetings will commence early morning on the 9th, and I believe later that afternoon you will be able to address relevant questions to the staff of the cabinet.
Եվ մոռացակ ասել, որ սա նախապես պլանավորված եւ այս իրավիճակի հետ կապ
This is not in response to the situation, it has been planned way back.
Javier Espinosa from El Mundo of Spain. Two questions. First, did you see by yourself cluster ammunition on the streets of Stepanakert? And the second, since last night and this morning it seems to be quiet in Stepanakert, no shelling, that's a mere coincidence or it's related to some kind of negotiation? Because we heard also in the media a lot of rumors about an offer of ceasefire. I don't know if it's true or not.
For the first part of your question, I will answer that I'm not a specialist. I do not know the details of how different ammunition looks, specifically projectiles. I've seen myself the destruction of the civilian infrastructure. So even if we suppose for a minute that damages were caused not by banned ammunition, of which numerously statements have been made, that's still unacceptable to shell civilian infrastructure. As regards banned or non-banned ammunition, then I suppose it is the Ministry of Defense that will present the details. And they do present either in photos or in short videos or in material evidence, physical evidence. So I'm sure that you will get enough information from them.
And I do not pretend to be able to tell the difference, but I rely 100% on the input by my colleagues who are knowledgeable in those matters, and they assure me that yes, that is the case. But let's for a moment imagine hypothetically that the destruction we see in Stepanakert is caused by non-prohibited arms and ammunition. Would that make any difference when you're killing innocent civilians? That would still be unacceptable, whether it's the damages caused by prohibited or allowed arms. And therefore, apart from that, the evidence you are asking about is amply available with our military colleagues who are ready to share it, whether it's photographic material, photographs, or AV footage. Case by case, that is available. You just have to ask where it belongs.
And the second part of the question, according to our information, shelling started in the morning with air alerts all around the area of Stepanakert. Well, at least as regards the medical part, we've been providing all the necessary service. Of course, we do not distinguish between the military or civilian personnel.
At least in as much as it pertains to providing medical services, we do not see so far any difference in the situation.
Just a small part I would like to add. Once again, it is very important to provide uninterrupted service, medical service to the civilian and military population, which is definitely not possible or very difficult in a situation when you're being shelled, staying in different bunkers and thinking that air alert might not stop. I have to move. So I had to move even in condition of air alert by putting the lives and health of my colleagues under threat. And the same is right now happening to all the services that have to provide for the life, for the routine, and specifically the medical services, the ambulances, for example, because of not wounds or injuries of war, but because of other health conditions, for example, cardiovascular diseases or heart attacks, or any other damage that can be caused by the enemy at this moment as well, by drones, by missiles, by rockets, fragments, explosions, waves, etc., which is once again has to be condemned.
And I repeat that in situations like this, being able to provide uninterrupted services to the civilian population is a predominant issue, and which is disrupted, if not made altogether possible by the constant terrorism. And I can illustrate it with my own example. I have spent most of last evening in shelter, but then again realizing that the air alert is not going to be removed anytime soon, I have to come out even under the conditions of the shelling, exposing myself and my colleagues to imminent danger. And that is, like I said, disrupting the delivery of essential and vital services to the civilian population. I have to emphasize, for example, we're not talking only military casualties of the conflict. We're talking regular people who need urgent assistance, like an old senior citizen who just had a heart attack and was being moved in an ambulance transferred from one location to the other. And the vehicle was targeted indiscriminately, both by rocket artillery and UAV fire, notwithstanding the clear markings of this being an ambulance. So this is clearly unacceptable and needs to be strongly condemned.
Liberty Radio. Mr. Torosyan, it is clear that it's the Ministry of Defense presenting information about the wounded, but at least can we know to what extent or what percentage of those wounded are under threat of losing their lives because of their health condition? Many relatives cannot find their soldiers, and if they know that their sons were wounded, where should they get the information from? Now, as regards the hospital, you mentioned that there is a direct threat of the hospital being targeted by the enemy. What would be the plan B? Does the hospital have a shelter part? Please present that information.
The rough breakdown of the injuries, like the percentage of those that are life-threatening or not. Second question is, what should we do? Where should the relatives and other individuals concerned about their next of kin being wounded address? What are the channels for which they could get meaningful information about their condition and state? And about whether there are backup plans about with respect to the hospital, and does it have adequate shelter capacity? Like you mentioned, there was a near miss of heat at the hospital.
Okay, I'll start from the last part of your question. You see, we naturally, at least myself as the Minister of Health, know the medical staff, have any information about the targetedness of different buildings. We don't know really. I'm just trying to say that they do not distinguish between the civilian or military infrastructure. I'm just thinking that they might not refrain from hitting hospitals. So, and that is why, not only at this moment, but in general, we always have the second plan, the plan B, to organize the service in the conflict zones for all medical facilities. I will not dwell on any other detail, not to put them under threat. As regards the first part of your question, the issue of filling the gap of information about those wounded is well known. I mean, we're getting various questions and inquiries from different sides to understand how that information is going to be provided from one regular and permanent source. There may be a hotline. I cannot tell you the number of it at this moment, but there will be one calling to which you will be able to find information about the condition of different soldiers, servicemen, different parts. But from the very beginning, those identified persons wounded are able to contact their relatives and kin on their own. I have myself asked that question in different hospitals. I've asked how they establish contact, and there are very few cases when there are wounded who are not recognizable, not identifiable. So the process of identifying the persons of those wounded is ongoing, and myself and my colleagues from the Ministry of Defense are into this. So when that system of provision of information is finally established, we'll tell you how to contact it. Now, as regards your first question, then I can tell you that most of those wounded are light or not severe wounds, and we also have very severe injuries comprising about, well, a smaller percentage in the total number of those wounded, but they definitely require more attention, and the main attention of the medical staff and facilities is concentrated on these cases so that we save their lives. Now, why would severe and extremely severe cases comprise small percentage of the total number of wounded? It's, I suppose, logical, because unfortunately, from those severely wounded, they are dead on the way to the hospital.
We have analyzed the patterns of the bombing and shelling, and which clearly indicates that there is absolutely no discrimination in targeting, which is why we consider it not altogether impossible that they will also hit civilian infrastructure, including our hospital. Therefore, I can assure you that we do have backup plans and facilities for the such possible eventualities. As for your second question, we do get a big number of calls and inquiries from relatives and concerned and people about the wounded. And today, today and early tomorrow, we will set up, this is being addressed as we speak, a hotline where I can't tell you the number at this point, which these individuals may call to get reliable information about the whereabouts and the condition of their wounded relatives. We sometimes, I myself have talked to many military servicemen being treated in hospitals and inquired about their communication with relatives, and predominant majority of them have no problems of calling and talking to their relatives. There is a problem with some of the wounded servicemen that we are either unconscious or have no IDs and we cannot communicate with them. There are mechanisms to address this, which we are also putting in place. So the solution, we cannot pin down either their names or regiments that they've been from, but that we're working on that, and there are solutions to this as well. As for your first question, the predominant majority of the wounded being treated have sustained medium and light injuries. Of course, there's a small percentage in proportion of grave injuries and extremely grave wounded. And of course, the attention of the medical personnel is mostly focused on this to save their lives. The reason, among others, as to why their share is so low is that unfortunately they do not always make it to the medical facilities.
Distinguished colleagues, there is not that much time. We'll give the floor to our colleagues who haven't asked questions yet. Well, I'd like to ask about the total number of those transported from Nagorno-Karabakh to Armenia, those that are now being treated in the hospitals here. Does it anyhow add load in the operations of the facilities, and what other measures do you envisage to provide help to the refugees?
That includes both military personnel and civilians.
Shall I answer in Armenian? So, frankly, I have already answered that question, at least the first part of it, by mentioning that the Ministry of Defense reports on those killed and wounded. And the main task for us is organizing uninterrupted medical treatment for these people. In that respect, the health system of the Republic of Armenia is in fact divided into three parts. First is the regular medical service that used to operate in the peaceful times. Second is the COVID fighting health system, which is yet fighting the global pandemic, the issue, the problem. And the third is the one dealing with those wounded. And in fact, it's worth mentioning how this conflict as a whole is a big burden upon the system, because in conditions of a pandemic, there is such an aggression against civilian population in a situation when all international organizations, yet quite long ago, urged all the parties to refrain from any escalations till the pandemic is overcome.
Is that the entire health system of Armenia now is working along three distinct dimensions. One is maybe described as business as usual, tending to our everyday issues like we did before, dealing with morbidity and treating diseases. The second dimension is working in conditions of the COVID pandemic, which is global in nature and doesn't recognize any borders. We have to handle that. The third dimension is dealing with the military and civilian casualties of war, which I also described to you in as much as applicable. But I have to just make a note that this creates an additional burden on the health system because in conditions of pandemic, aggression and escalation of the conflict is absolutely impermissible, and there have been many calls and statements by relevant international organizations and players asking not to revert to violence in the existence of the pandemic, which is something that has been blatantly violated by the Azeri offensive.
And the second part of the question, persons transported to the Republic of Armenia get the full medical package of services. There was a special government resolution adapted for that purpose days ago, and now they will be receiving the largest possible medical package of services. So we know that such support is already being organized. We have also organized additional assistance to some vulnerable groups of the population, persons with mental disorders that are now receiving their treatment at Sevan Center for Mental Health and hemodialysis patients that have been transported to Yerevan to continue the renal deficiency treatment. So, and respectively, the whole medical community is in charge.
With respect to those the people with injuries evacuated from Marta, that a few days ago the cabinet has passed a resolution specifically providing for the biggest possible medical coverage package addressed specifically to these individuals. That is equivalent to the most coverage that any Armenian citizen did get before that. We also addressed the issues of the vulnerable population that was covered by the health services in the past. That is, for example, and we have transferred them en masse to, for example, the people with mental conditions are now all being transferred to the Sevan mental health institution and being treated there. As another example, those who need hemodialysis, about a dozen patients have also been moved to respective countries in Yerevan and continue to receive their treatment there. Like I said, the health infrastructure and the authorities of Armenia are doing everything within their power and even more to adequately address the situation as it emerges.
Distinguished colleagues, provided the time is short and the Unified Center has another discussion at 11, I will ask a question. Our colleague from Shapa.am asked the following question. Mr. Minister, do we need to provide any medical supplies from abroad? Well, I can mention that we, at this moment, do not need anything urgently as regards pharmaceuticals and equipment, because the equipment that used to operate in the hospitals is now being provided to the hotspots. But because of the duration of operation, some of the equipment just comes out of order, and apparently there might be such a necessity occurring in the nearest future. So when that happens, we will organize the respective procurement transactions, and if there are individuals or organizations that would like to help us with this, then we'll ask them to contact the Ministry of Health so that this work is organized. And even if there are purchases, then purchases have to be very strictly regulated so that we purchase things that we urgently need. Doing this in a well-organized manner is very important, not to provide this service.
Since we are using the existing capacity and moving around material as required, but considering the possibility of the length of hostilities, there may emerge eventually need to replace some consumables or address the wear and tear of medical equipment, for which purpose we are conducting, as we speak, proactive procurement. And if there would be individual organizations willing to be of help in this matter, I would urge them to contact the Ministry of Health to make the process more organized and coordinated. That is for the whatever medical equipment and material they intend to provide and help with procurement to be exactly that which is needed rather than just conventional stuff.
Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, let me inform that the Armenian Unified Information Center staff will be operating through the day. We will be live streaming with our colleagues from the region of Syunik joining. We'll continue together. Thank you.